just take a break and move to the back room where we will continue the meeting or the study session and talk about issues, public comment, and so forth. Then after that, if we need to come back into here, we'll do it that way, whatever seems proper. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay, we do have a quorum. In fact, everybody, all 7 of us are here. I want to note that. And Adam, would you like to hand out your report?
So, actually May was the busiest month we have ever had since the service has been in operation. So total calls for the month were about 250, as you can see up at the top, 184 with the 911s. Then you factor in the transfers, it was a pretty busy month for us. We had several 15 to 20 days. So averages out, 911s average out to almost 6 a day. You can see our in route times are still 0.82, so less than a minute. There were a couple outliers there, but those have been corrected. The rest of the times are actually below for the previous month, so we are working on those times. You can read down the list, not a lot has changed. We're still doing our mobile integrated health, so our community visit program. A lot of those COVID numbers kind of had to tick back up, so some of those have been COVID visits, some of them have been Joseph Park visitor visits. But we are working on expanding that program. We did go down to Marshall a few times this month as well. I think we only had to do one on Epic Christmas. The second page, you can see patients still have the option of where they are selecting to go. We're happy to see that most of them are actually picking to come back to Paris as we expand our options for what we provide in care. We didn't have any issues with patients not being able to go where they wanted to go, so we're happy with that. Operationally, I talked last month, we are still on track to get our new ambulance August 1st, and hopefully that'll be in service by the middle of August. I'm going to take 2 weeks to get that fully licensed, inspected, graphics, but hopefully that'll hit the road middle of August. Additional CPR devices will hopefully be here by the end of the month, so each truck will have a mechanical CPR device on it. Just this week, we did acquire 3 basically state-of-the-art ventilators, basically the nicest transport ventilators you can have. So after the crew, that's going to be a fairly extensive process in getting the crew trained up because they are, like I said, they're state-of-the-art. They can do so many different things. So that'll be an extensive training program, but those will be on every unit, hopefully by mid-July. But we were very fortunate. We've got a lot of nice equipment here in the past month, and we are still far and above most other services and what we can provide. Staffing hasn't hit us full bore yet, but we're kind of in the same boat as every other business in the world right now with staffing. We still, as far as my schedule goes out, we're full staff, so we hope to be able to keep that on track. I did hire 3 PRN employees. One was already given full-time, and those were all local people. Actually, the 3 of those were EMTs that completed our recent EMT class. We are still scheduled to do our 2 EMT classes this fall. One will be for the high school students, as they'll have an option of either doing health occupations or an EMT program. And at the same time, we'll be doing one for the community as well. You guys have any questions, comments, concerns for me? Or Samantha?
We keep asking this question. If they refuse treatment, you don't charge them, is that correct? Okay.
There is a caveat in there. If we provide a lot of services, say a diabetic, where we use a ton of supplies, there is a caveat where our billing company can go in and bill a couple of those items if they have certain insurance, but for the most part, no, those are non-billable services.
Individual, like if they don't have insurance, you're not sending them just a bill.
No.
Kudos to Adam or Lady, but also to Sean Robinson, because it has been a feat to get the Illinois State Board of Education to approve the curriculum for the high school plan. But it is at the state level, we've received word that it is going to be approved. And so that will be a full-time education position that Horizon Health will be providing to the high school, and they will be teaching the seniors who opt in for that class all year long, the EMT course, and then they will graduate able to sit and take their EMT exam at the state level and become employable within a few weeks of graduation, so.
How many are involved in that program, kids?
Well, he went and spoke at the junior class in the end of April and had 5 sign up right away. We've also, the high school's also offered it to Martinsville, Chrisman, and Shiloh, and we have a verbal commitment for 2 out of Martinsville and 1 out of Shiloh right now. So we'll see when enrollment happens in August, truly, because that's not until the students actually enroll. But
Do they do it like after school?
no, it's a part of their daily
Right.
class, yeah.
Huh.
So they'll have, just like you would go to shop class for an hour,
Right.
you would go to EMT class for an hour.
Yeah.
And then mostly book stuff for the first semester, and then when they come back after Christmas, then they'll start being on our campus doing more time in the ambulance, time in the emergency
Yeah.
department, getting their CPR certification, those types of things.
Is there a fee for the class?
There is, but through the Eastern Illinois area of special education, there's a grant that offsets that, and so they pay for 100% of the student enrollment, so there's no cost to the student.
So that was kind of a setback at first, because we thought it was gonna be about $800 a student. So Sean did a lot of footwork in this, but they were able to go find a grant program to get a lot of that paid for, so. There's been a ton of work that's gone into that, so.
Any other questions for Adam or myself?
So that's a partnership
Uh-huh.
with the high school.
In Eastern Illinois area special education. It's the same thing that happens with what's called the health occupations course. Those students go to class all year long, their senior year, and then they get set for the CNA exam at the end of the year. Well, we wanted them to have a different option, because traditionally that CNA course typically only drew the girls, and we didn't see a whole lot of boys entering that health occupations course. So we were trying to meet that demand of giving everybody a different option other than just the CNA course.
Will they be able to ride on the ambulance when the ambulance makes a call?
Uh-huh,
Is there liability insurance or something that would cover them?
so
Okay.
we
Just
cover
wondering.
that.
Good, okay. Just wondering.
Yeah, that's all that work that I do behind the
Okay.
scenes that nobody knows about.
I just
Takes a
asked.
lot of work.
I just asked.
But yeah. So there's partnerships and agreements signed with the high school and that piece of it. And then of course now Martinsville School and now Shiloh School, and so where we cover their students while they're on our campus.
Speaking of partnerships, just in the past couple months, we've signed several contractual agreements with area colleges for their students to come do time in the hospital and on the ambulance. So we're getting more and more students in the door.
One way to get
Help us get some employees,
some
hopefully.
employees,
Yep.
absolutely.
Yeah, right.
It takes a lot of work to foster students and have a good clinical experience, but it is a great way to get a prospective employee, and so I encourage any entity that would take a student to take them. I know police have difficult time getting recruits. If they can partner and have some sort of school, ride-along program or something, it's a great way to recruit up students, because we do, like Adam said, we pulled 3 out of the 8 that we had in the class, so. All right, well, look, you guys have a full agenda. Thank you for allowing us to go first.
Thanks, guys.
Matt, do you want to come up here?
Right. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So I'm Matt Sheeler, Portland with Lifley. 2 years ago, I think I sat here. COVID last year. It's still ongoing, don't get me wrong, but it's a pleasure to be back. I know you have a lot of documents in front of you, so the goal would be to focus in on the financial report, which will be the bound one mostly.
I bet nobody probably has that here. We got that a couple of weeks ago, and I thought you would have it with you to give us another copy. So none of us has
Yeah.
a sheet of, no.
Now, I handed out today the federal award
Right.
audit. That's what I handed out. But we handed out the full audit a couple weeks ago.
Oh, yeah, I didn't bring extra copies.
All right.
Again, I'll just point on some, but that is the right one.
Yeah,
You
that
have,
is the right
yes.
one, yes. You're the only one, I didn't even
All
remember.
right, I'll pull mine out.
That's the Fed, I think that's the,
Is that this one?
yes, that is, yep.
Yeah, you
There you go.
So there's a bunch of reports that we've handed out this year, so, things are different, obviously, with some additional work that we did for the county, but just gonna kinda go over a few of the letters. Just in general, we issued what's referred to as an audit committee letter, so it's really the communication that we would have with you guys to let you know that we had no disagreements, we had no difficulties conducting the audit, so that is a really good thing to be able to report. We did have to do an extra level of an audit. I'll go over it in just a few minutes, related to all the COVID funding that you received even as of 11/30/20. We understand all counties are getting more American Rescue Plan funds as we speak. So we also issued what's referred to as a management letter, provide some improvements for some suggestions. A lot of it is one, keeping up on your federal compliance. There's gonna be federal dollars flowing through the county for the next 4 or 5 years. Just making sure you have an individual who's keeping up on the reporting requirements with that. It's an ever-changing thing, so there's training out there. I would just be highly recommending that you would encourage those individuals to take the training. We also did a separate commissary audit for the prisoner account. There was a letter sent out by the Illinois Department of Corrections indicating that a separate audit should be done. The county could have chosen to do it internally. I think the idea was we would do it the first year, and maybe next year that the county would take that on. What we effectively found is there were a few instances of some documentation, 3 actually, of the sample that we had selected where the documentation wasn't there. We're finding that to be very common. Those prisoner commissary funds are ones where it's typically controlled by a very small number of people. So sometimes they'll pay bills without proper support and documentation. We happen to find that with 3 of them, so just wanted to point that out. We also have, I think, maybe you may not have, but we also have a circuit clerk audit, again, required by state statute. Happy to report we had no compliance findings with that one, so you should be rest assured on that one. I think everyone has that report on federal awards. That's the smaller one. So wanted to spend a little time on that. So this is truly a new report this year. Yeah, so it should be labeled report on federal awards. Yeah. So the county expended nearly $1 million of federal dollars in the current year. Let me just flip back and tell you where you can see those grants.
Most of them were notes, wasn't it?
Yep, so page 7, so that was the commissary adjustment. Yep, so pages 6 and 7 are the federal grants that the county received. So it's kind of you have to flip back and forth, but effectively, as you look at that $1 million, 598,000 of those dollars were COVID-related grants. So the threshold for us to do a separate audit is 750,000. So as you kind of pull that back, you're roughly at 400,000 of federal dollars that you've been getting. As Jeff indicated, a lot of it is health department related, WIC and all that stuff. So, but there were, like I said, roughly 598,000 of COVID dollars. We are happy to report that we had no compliance findings or questioned costs with when we tested those COVID funds. So that is good to know. Okay.
At this point, I'd like to remind the board that the health department has their own internal people that handle their compliance, and we have our own through Josh Knight. Josh Knight handles all of the federal and Cures dollars, rescue dollars. He's plugged in, handles our, GATA, which keeps us all on the straight and narrow with the state of Illinois. And so we have one coordinator in each place.
Jeff, health department, they got probably close to $800,000. Does that money stay with the health department? There's any excess of any money left over? Does it come back into our fund?
No, it would not come into our
Okay.
funds whatsoever.
Okay, that's fine.
That's something they do. We're totally separate,
Okay,
and we keep it that way.
okay.
And they had a lot of federal dollars for contact tracing and all the
Right.
expenses that were associated with that. And
The only money we got back on that was like in the levy funds, where we had issues with Social Security, IMRF, all that. We pulled that back in.
I'm on the health department board, and we have a meeting next week, so I just gonna, that's the reason why I asked, so.
No problem, Dan.
Okay, so for those who do have the actual audit with you, now let's go over the actual financial report audit, so. As I, just to maybe before we get into the details of it, just to explain just the overall audit process. Of course, we're not auditing every transaction that flows in and out of the county. That's not what an audit is. An audit is really a risk-based audit, so it's where we look at the county's internal controls, and based on that, we do specific tests around any weaknesses that are out there. So we do confirm significant assets, revenues with outside third-party sources. So what you see in here are those that verification of those confirmations. So let's look at in the report now. If you look at pages 1 and 2, it's our audit opinion. If you look at the bottom of page 1, yeah, let's turn. Yeah, bottom of page 1, opinion. So it's where we state our opinion on the county's financial statements. It is a clean, unmodified opinion. It's the passing grade, so that is good to be aware of. So very happy to report that to you. Pages 3 through 12, that's referred to as the management's discussion and analysis. If there's one area that I would always point county boards to, it's that area, because it does pull you back a little bit from the numbers, provides some narrative on why things happened, and it also gives you some 2-year comparison. That's on pages 6 and 7. So highly recommend that if you're going to spend a few minutes looking at some pages in there, look at pages 3 through 12. Let's now turn to pages 5. Yeah.
Let's go back to 3 financial highlights. That first paragraph where it says county assets, then it says of this amount, the unrestricted net position is a negative 1.1 million. The county's total position of 800. What does all that mean?
So what that means is you have a breakdown, and that's noted on page 6. Of your net position. So you see down at the bottom, net position is split between net invested in capital assets, restricted, and then the ending unrestricted net position. So net invested in capital assets are the buildings, net of any debt, net of any accumulated depreciation on those. Restricted is just because of the revenue source. It's those funds that there's a levy fund or there's other fees and fines where it has to be used. The net is the unrestricted net position. So, and a lot of the reason for the negative has to do with the fact that you have a net pension liability. It's it might be small. Yep.
That's why I wanted, so everybody, because we'd rather hear it from you than me.
Right.
Okay? No, I'm not saying I couldn't tell you, but it's nicer to hear it from the audit.
Yep.
Okay?
This is not one we inherited when we got on board, right?
No,
Something
no,
different.
you'll probably get into that. That's whittled down to about 35 grand right now.
35 grand? Jesus, good shoes.
So it wouldn't be a surprise to see this every year.
It's gonna
just
fluctuate,
because of the approval.
and I'm sure he's gonna talk about it, but net investments of IRF funds We took a beating this year. Everybody did.
No, this year was really good, so it actually improved. So one of the main reasons that
Oh, I thought
no, so this
I had it backwards, sorry.
yeah,
guys.
and that's why if you look at page
I'm
6.
taking you out of order.
No, that's okay. No worries. So if you look at page 6, that's why you see that unrestricted. It was a negative 1.6 million last year.
Oh,
This year it's 1.1.
okay.
So that has a lot to do, and I'll touch on the good results in IMRF.
Okay.
In,
Yeah,
in
that's, I
this,
think
yeah, we'll
everybody
touch on
would be
that. Yep.
interested in.
Yep. Okay. Good questions. All right, so let's turn to pages 15 and 16. So pages 15 and 16, what we focus on these pages are referred to as the county's major funds. So you kind of need to flip back and forth to see all the funds that are listed as major. We have a column on page 16 for other governmental funds. So overall, if you look on page 16, there's roughly 5 million of fund balances on hand. Roughly 4.8 million is sitting in the restricted, meaning funds that are restricted based on the revenue source.
Social Security,
Yes.
IMRF,
Highway.
tort, highway, yeah.
Health. Yes.
Health.
Yep. Pages 18 and 19. So that was the balance sheet. 18 and 19 are the income statement. So if you look on page 19, again, we present the same major funds in a column with the other governmental funds. Overall, the total governmental funds, third line from the bottom, increased a little over $1 million this year. Okay. Some of the key footnotes, page 29. Note number 3. This is it's called a custodial credit risk footnote. It lets you know that all of the county's deposits are covered either by FDIC or pledged collateral, so it means your cash is safe and secure at the banks. So that's good. So now comes up with the pension plan. That starts on page 31. As you're aware, the county has 3 different types of pension plans: the regular, the sheriff, and then the elected county officials. Turn to page 34 with me. I will point out that this disclosure is on a calendar year because that's the most recent available information we have from IMRF when we start the audit. So this is valued as of 12/31/19. So this is a reconciliation for the regular plan of the net pension liability. So how you read this is it takes the pension liability, so it's what you owe to your employees, compared to the plan net position, the assets. Gives you the net result, the net pension liability, and in this case, if you look at the balance at the end of the year, it's actually an asset of $130,000. So it had a liability at the beginning of the year of $1.5 million. You may ask why. The net investment income, $2.8 million this year. So that plan is fully funded at 100%.
Okay, would you say that a little slower?
Sure. Is there something specific like that you had a question on, or?
No, I just need to understand this last line again on 34.
So this is page 34, the bottom. It's a sensitivity. We're required to
Okay.
disclose. There are significant actuarial assumptions being used.
Based on the percentage of discount?
Yes.
Okay.
So as that changes, it can, as you can tell, it wildly fluctuates that net pension liability. It's valued at 7.25 is how IMRF is doing it.
And so, in my world, this is a negative 130, but it's be considered an asset?
It's
It's an
considered-
asset at that point.
Yes.
Boy, that's hard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Welcome to
Yeah.
Governmental.
All right.
That's a great question. I want to make sure you understand. So the sheriff's plan, the same table, that's on page 38. So again, this one started at a net pension liability of $698,000. It ended at a $71,000 pension liability. So again, very well funded, funded at 99%. The ECHO plan, that is on page 42. Had a beginning liability of $562,000, ending of $102,000. So that plan is funded at 97%. I mentioned you can see all of the liabilities decreasing and in some cases turning to assets. I mentioned with the regular plan, it had a lot to do, or had all to do with the net investment income. So it's the plan return. If you added the net investment income for those three plans, it had a income of $4.7 million compared to last year where you did take the beating of a $1.6 million loss. So big change in the impact really means to the county is lower required contributions, and especially as even 2020 was another good year, that we'll report that next year. So the county does benefit because IMRF typically will ask for lower required contributions.
Are required of them doing this
Yep.
anyway.
Yep.
And we've been making large cash, which we might look at again this year.
Right.
Because that saves us 7 or 6.5%.
Yes.
Right off the top.
Yep. We actually have been seeing some counties take out loans because it's more advantageous. The borrowing rate is at a really low. You guys are at a very well funded. Some of our counties aren't necessarily at that funded ratio.
We did that at one point.
Thanks to him. He does a great job.
Yeah. Some of them are trying to
Don't
catch
like
up.
those compliments,
Note number 6, just maybe another 1 or 2 footnotes. The county did issue some tax anticipation notes. Oh, I'm sorry, page 44.
but, okay.
I'm sorry. The county did issue and pay off that tax anticipation note. You can see that in and out noted there, note number 6.
And again, the tax anticipation is simply cash flow. Okay, that's what Don does, just to make sure. That should not be an issue this year. I don't see us having it. I hope to God we don't have to borrow any money at all.
Well, that's partially because we took in, we gave people the option to pay a little bit later.
Yeah. So we're in good shape.
So that's just a quick snapshot of the audit. I also walked around and handed out, and I know everyone has this, is this.
Before you go to that, the Fund 100 or the general fund, what's happened with that?
So if you actually go, if you want to talk about that, that's on page 64.
Okay?
So the general fund, as noted on the front page of the audit, is a combination of several different funds, and you can see the breakdown of the county general on page 64 with all those other funds that are rolled into the total general fund. So as you look at the income statement for the county general is on page 74. You can see that there's a lot of numbers in here. The net change in fund balance, so you can see that the county general fund increased $622,000.
So the liability that we inherited, Carl, is down to 10, 11 years ago, is down to, where is that? It's like 35.
Yeah, $35,453.
Okay?
Good,
So,
Yeah, that's what I wanted to highlight to you guys.
good,
Okay?
good.
good point. So last thing to go over is at this point, I have a 3-year comparison of, so these are revenues and expenditures that are listed on the audit, but on a 3-year comparison, and I'll continue to add to that so you can see how the county is funded. So intergovernmental revenues this year had a nice increase. Public safety sales tax, $454,000 in 2020. So that's the reason for the increase. So Then there, in the other revenue, there was also about a $500,000 Ameren payment. Yep, so a nice influx there too. So what I like to look at too is the revenues by percent, because it tells you how you're funding your county. So that's at the very bottom of the, I got a different one, so I just sorted, so you can see that overall, intergovernmental revenues, charges for services, and property taxes are mostly how you fund the county's operations. And you can see how intergovernmental revenues is actually going up. Has a lot to do with the public safety sales tax, and that's going to continue as you get more of a full year in there. So a great way to offset expenses. So the expenditures, same thing. Just to point out, you can see that again, focusing in the next page, highways and bridges and public safety continue to be the largest percent of what the county uses, of its expenditures. So, quick snapshot there. I'll ask, are there more questions? You know, you have probably, I guess, people waiting for you, but
So how frequently do we have a full audit like this?
this is annually.
Annual.
Required by the state, yes. And it's good, and the federal audit is gonna continue through 2025, 2026. I know those American Rescue Plan funds are flowing through, and there's some additional caveats with those funds as well, so.
And does Dawn have enough staff to absorb that additional paperwork requirements?
Don has, I can't remember, I think he's talked to us about it the last meeting, that he'd wanna put on one more full-time staff here next year, which I think is appropriate, but I'm only one of 7, okay?
And we are hearing other counties doing the same, because administratively, there's a lot of work. And there's filings that have to be done on a regular basis. You can't just wait till the end of the year. They have stipulations in those grants that you have to file.
Now, Josh will be filing a lot of those.
Yes, he would be.
Not the,
Right.
not
So
the treasurer.
the treasurer be involved in getting the money going, but Josh will do the actual filing?
That's correct.
Okay.
It's better to have it one centralized handling all of this. Don will handle the finance part. Josh will use those figures that the treasurer comes up with and do the filing and reporting,
Okay.
and keep us on an even keel. And he is they're both very conservative. Don and Josh are conservative, so they're gonna point out issues if we have them. That's what we want.
So that's all that I have. I guess I'll say further questions. If not, I thank everybody.
I have another question. So you said there weren't any issues that you
Right.
saw, and that's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Were there any smaller workflow or process
Yeah,
improvements?
yes, so we had issued a management letter, and you may have that in there.
I may or may not have read
There was.
Yeah, so there were a few comments, again,
it.
on the
Okay.
jail commissary.
Right.
And then also,
Okay,
the uniform guidance, the federal implementation, and also continued documentation on GATA. GATA
okay.
continues to be a sticking point with a lot of counties.
Well, and that's why we've consolidated GATA.
Yes, that's
with-
great.
With one person. We had some problems because, they call somebody and instead of them referring it to Josh,
Yeah.
they would answer the question.
That's a good recommendation.
Yeah.
What's GATA?
It's a state required filing that they are wanting a breakdown of the county's expenditures split between how they spend them for state, federal, and local. So you need someone to accumulate all the various grants that the county had. We audit the federal side, but not that we don't audit the state side, but there's no requirement. So there's a multitude of grants that are state that have to be accumulated. So,
And Matt, GATA is an acronym.
yes, it stands for Grant Accountability and Transparency Act.
And everybody loves it.
Said no.
I would help you, but I can't get down there and get up.
got it.
Too old. Good job, Andy.
Any other questions?
I had to
for
write
Matt?
this down, or it's gonna be gone.
We appreciate it.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
moving me up on the agenda.
No problem. Thank you for coming
Yeah,
down and
thank you.
seeing us. You take care and
Yeah.
safe trip back.
We will.
We're going to take a break and move out. Do you have something first, Carl? Move out there and we'll start off with the discussion first and then we'll go to public comment. It's the right approach for a number of reasons and for passionate reasons. So, do I have support here amongst, or do we have support here amongst our fellow board members?
Yeah, I'm not in that district. I live on Court Street, so I'm not too familiar with the northern part of Edgar County, but I have received phone calls. I have coffee in the morning at the Main Street about every day. I've heard from different people, and all of them I've talked to do not want the setback to change. So at first I thought, well, 2,000 square feet or 2,000 feet would be acceptable, but I'm going back to what we originally talked about, which is 3,200.
3250.
3,250, so I'm with 3,250.
Want to hear what I gotta say? Yeah. I've received several phone calls, and just like being a teacher for years, I get a lot of phone calls, some good, some bad. But I've received several letters, none of them signed, which I'm not taking much credence when somebody doesn't sign their letters, but all of them have been negative. Nobody supports the wind farm. I live in the city. I don't deal with the same problems that you folks do out in the country. So I'm bound to listen to those that know more about it than I do. We'll see how this goes. I would say if we put this at 3,250, that will basically eliminate the wind farm, yes or no?
It doesn't 100%, but it
But
gets,
it tends to put so that's what we're doing here.
that's what's recommended.
So I'm pretty much in favor of 3,250 myself. Now, I wasn't that way before, I was kind of right here, but I've gotten no positive feedback from anybody that's seen it. And I see a lot of people. That's it for me.
Either of you guys?
You know, we've been working on this probably a year and a half, and I didn't feel like we got much input either way. Did you?
No.
I'm glad if this is the way you feel, that you gotta tell us what you want us to do. We were sitting there thinking, you know, every once in a while someone would say, well, I don't care what way, or I don't like it. Lisa would continue to say she didn't like it, but you know, I just want to encourage everybody. If you want us, I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing it for everybody out there. So if you want us to do something, you got to let us know. And if this
And
is,
you have, and we
you have.
appreciate it.
Yes. Good. I guess that's all I got to say.
I'm with the 3,250.
Carl, you got anything you want to say?
I've never been contacted by anybody, quite honestly.
I contacted you
What's your number of contact?
last week.
Do you have a phone?
Yeah.
You did?
Yep, I contacted every board member last week, and I sent a signed
Yeah.
letter.
Well, see, he doesn't get internet though.
He's,
Okay.
Well,
he's
I
from,
phone called everyone as well.
Oh, okay.
So I will have you know I did.
Oh, I didn't mean to argue.
Anyway, I think everybody knows I'm personally against it. I have been that way from the beginning, and I haven't changed my mind.
So I thought this would be important, hang on one second, this would be important for you to know the evolution that's taken place in the board, okay? And rather than have us go through public comment and everybody's blood pressure go up when there was no need for it. And I wanted you to see how we felt and how much we respect the folks we represent, okay? Now, you had a quick question?
Was that 3250 from property lines, non-participating landowners, or from foundation of homes?
I think it's foundation.
Okay.
Yeah. So I hope you appreciate what we're going through here. Now, we'd like to open it up for public comment. If you all are you all done?
yeah.
Okay. Public, go ahead.
Yeah, 3,250 is from a resident, it's not from like a barn or shed or something like that.
It's for primary
Yeah.
structures.
Like if it's a house, 3250, if it's a barn sitting out in the middle of the field, I don't think 3250 applies to that. That shouldn't make any difference, because it's not, somebody doesn't live in it anyway, so it shouldn't make any difference on the setback to a barn or a shed. It does to a house where you're living, and that's the main thing with the 3250. Am I correct, Jeff?
Yes. As long as it's not from the doghouse, I'll be all right. We'd like to open up for public comment. Yes, we're trying. Oh, you got the petitions?
My name is Kirk Allen. I'd like to put those in the record. Those are petitions that were provided to me.
Thank you.
To support the 3250.
Okay.
This list of binders, Augie, you'll get the honors. This will be a public record.
Thank you.
Brief history, Kansas Township. We initiated a zoning board. I think Bill Stipp was one of our board members. I'm not sure if any more of them are here. We researched and researched and researched. This is a compilation of that research that I think for additional things that need to be addressed should go to whatever wind committee is put together. Wind energy economics. Now this one I look back on because of the title and I kind of second guess it. World Health Organization. Everybody will get a kick out of the World Health Organization. But this is a wind farm study in that regard with a lot of details. Wind turbines health and low frequency noise. Night noise guidelines for Europe. Decommissioning of wind turbines and wind turbine noise, sleep and health. And I'd like to submit all of this into the public record. Augie, this
Would you
is...
take it up to my office for me, please?
I can do that if you'd like.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
It was that information that we used to establish our zoning authority and our setback guidelines. I beg of you to focus on the gold standard in wind farm ordinances, which is Iroquois County. And it's a 12 times diameter, because as these get bigger, the setback needs to be larger. It grows. As they grow, the ordinance automatically grows with it. You don't have to keep changing it. That's the gold standard. They've not been sued over it. There's a limitation. If you make it too restrictive, they try to sue and say, hey, you can't do that. I get that, but they've not had any problem with lawsuits. And they've been able to protect the property owners. When I say property owners, I'm talking about your residents. Those values have been decimated because of the wind farms. And that's an important element. I think 3250 is a good starting point, but personally, I think it needs to be even more than that based on what we're seeing in the actual studies and the homework that's being done by a lot of people all over the country. I would urge you to do that. Yes, sir.
To that end, the board will be appointing and creating a combination wind farm and solar committee. And this is something that has to be looked at almost continuously.
And I'm glad you brought that up, and I wanted to close with that.
Sorry.
The wind ordinances, there's an assessment issue that comes into this. The assessment ability on wind farms expires this year.
Yes.
It's in the revenue code, and state law says it's through 2021, which means there may not be any tax revenue off of these things they say are going to bring so much tax revenue. The solar operations that are now creeping into Edgar County on the west side with Ashmore, the revenue code allows assessment of private solar. There's no commercial assessment in state law right now, which means there is no tax revenue coming out of solar either. In 2021, we could lose all of it on wind farms, which give or take, however your opinion is. But the tax issue is a big one because they tell you, and that's part of the economic study, we get told one thing, but what is really happening is entirely different. And they're presenting what they speculate is happening. They don't give you actual numbers of what has happened. And if it was as good as they claim, they would use the evidence of positivity, and they don't. And we saw that up north with Vermilion County, and was it Champaign County? There were two counties where they liened property and actually went to a tax sale right up to the day on one of the towers. Well, if you've got a wind farm, you may have your property have a lien on it. You may not be able to sell it. So I would encourage a moratorium on solar until that issue is addressed from an assessment standpoint.
Which is on the agenda.
Awesome. And with your setbacks, as you move forward, there's a lot of things that could be tweaked in that ordinance to make it stronger to protect the communities. That's all I got. Thank you.
That's a good question.
Yes, sir.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Sure, sure. Landowners, people that own land or live somewhere else, do you notice that they want the wind farms or don't want the wind farms? To me, that would be a difference.
We've got, I've talked to
All
some
these
that,
people here own property in that area that the wind farm would affect.
I've seen about a 50-50 split. I've talked to several that they don't live here, they live in Texas or Florida,
Right.
but they want no part of it.
Okay,
And
that's
the
what
reason
I'm
they don't want it, if it comes on their property, they'll never be able to sell it because nobody's buying ground that's got wind farms on it.
That's what I was asking. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we ask that public comments be limited to 5 minutes, and we don't need, we need your name, but not where you're from. That's not necessary. And it is, if you do have questions, we ask that you let us know what they are and we'll answer it later, but it's not a dialogue kind of thing, so. The floor is yours, guys. Yes, Michael?
Mike Taylor from Christmas. Michael, if you're mad at me, but
Was that me? Oh, I didn't mean to do it like Donna did it. Mike?
this is a list. The vast majority of these are generational farm landowners in the north end of the county, lifelong taxpayers and the residents of this county. All I want you to do is look at each signature and consider that in your decisions.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Okay, anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Glenda Waller. Sorry, I'm just gonna drop these
You guys?
in the file.
Absolutely.
I'm Renee Craig,
Hi, Renee.
and I've got 154 signatures here. A lot, as Mike said, generational landowners. I'm got 5th generation on my farm, family farm north of Hume, and we don't want them. My signatures are all over the county, every corner, and in the middle. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, I'm Glenda Waller, and I am a resident and landowner of Edgar County. I'm going to submit the signatures that I have gotten,
Thank you.
and it's more from the western side of Edgar County. But I also would like to take the time, and I'm going to provide each of the board members my points to consider. So please take a copy and pass it down. But my points I want you to consider are the board's responsibility. I want you to give thoughtful consideration of why wind farms are needed in Edgar County. Likely, we don't have time here today for that much of the explanation, but I'd like for you to delay your vote because initially I thought you were going back to 2,000 feet, but now I've since learned that you're going to the church at 3250.
Well, we're going to keep it at 3250. It is currently at 3250.
Okay. My points that we want to preserve a legacy. Generations have worked to build up the soil, specifically the Drummer Flanagan soil. Wind farms are rewarding the short-sightedness of current landowners who are not looking down the road and after the wind turbines are gone. There's no hurry to get windmills up in Edgar County. And there might be new, less invasive technologies being developed that we don't know about. Definitely turbines deface the landscape. And I don't want you to think, at times I'm thinking that you think the additional dollars for wind farm landowners could mean filling our coffers now, but what will the wind farms do to the value of productive land in the future? So I'm asking you to delay your decision, if possible, to get more information. And I did have a number of people landowners who did not even want to sign that petition because they would say, a wind turbine is totally non-negotiable, and they weren't even willing to sign the setback. And there was a significant landowner that said that they felt that it definitely would deface the value of farm ground, and they look to purchase farm ground in the future, but they will not purchase a parcel of ground that has a wind farm on it. So, yeah, I'd like for you to review my points here, and I appreciate the chance to talk with you,
Thank you.
okay?
Folks? Well, go ahead, please. Hi.
Nancy Hogan. I live east of Hildreth, Illinois, on the Hildreth Moraine, the top of the ridge. I wrote the lease to Explore One going across my moraine 9 years ago. All the meetings were transparent and public for everybody. All the same information had to be given to everybody. Not this little group of farmers around this coffee table and that guy down the road. And there was nothing that could not be discussed amongst ourselves. There was a huge escrow fund that had to be in a local bank for the decommission of these. As the Grinnells get larger, you need a bigger setback. You made a very good point. They will never cancel out and make you a red cent. Last year I visited 4 times the nation's largest wind farm initiative, by the first one that is being done by a public utility. Those people were desperate. They'd been through 2 century floods and a drought year. They knew they were ripe for the picking. They couldn't say no to them because they couldn't afford not to say no to them. They couldn't stand up to them. They had to bring in all the destabilization. I helped with that, Rick, just to set those up in that soil. My neighbors to the west, my heart bleeds for them. Their roads have been decimated. Everything they were promised has not been done at all, and they have no recompense. And if Renee has a windmill on her farm, they don't care about tile, and they know it's destroying the hydraulics of that land. I'm 3rd generation owner, and I farm. Her stuff screws up the drainage in my field. Well, if I don't have a turbine and I'm not part of the project, I'm screwed. I have to call Chubby's or somebody to come and fix my top at my expense. And I beg you, talk to Chubby's. See what they've gone through with this solar farm. In an area that was retiled by Mr. Humphreys. I know the man. I have nothing against him. That's his land. He had new tile put in not more than 2 or 3 years ago. It has been destroyed, and they don't care. They said, oh, just can't you just tile around it? That is not how it works. That's not how land works. I can give you a copy of that lease because they said it was the finest one ever written. I can't get any. The same people you are dealing with these companies are the same people I dealt with personally 9 years ago. I went to the tax assessor's office. I examined every single owner of every single parcel, no matter where they live, living, dead, you name it. I worked with these people. I called them up because I've only received 1 card in the mail about all this stuff. Nothing else. I've only seen 1 newspaper article. That is not transparency, to say the least. I called them up. Hey, old buddy, how you doing? Hey, can I see a copy of your lease? Oh, no. Why not? Last time around, everybody can see everything. They will not give me anything. They won't talk to me. I've known these people for over a decade. Well, we'd have to have you sign a gag order. Oh, in Hildreth, Illinois, ain't gonna happen. No! And what concerns me, this is stuff that's supposed to just supplement energy, not supplant it. Similar words mean very different things. And this is what they want. I would ask of you folks, how familiar are you right now today with where the House bills are? One wants to grant Batch of Kansas the same eminent domain as a public utility. The second one wants to make it so that basically you folks as our county board have no say-so. You can't zone, you can't do penalty swap. No municipality can, and no township can. Now I know that's an awful lot on your shoulders on our behalf, but if there's any way you can keep them out. Because if not, they're just I'll probably look out a window one fine day and something's coming into my field making all kinds of god-awful mess. Well, now really, do you know what's going to happen then? That is my grant. I will protect it. I will defend it. This is not good for the environment. It is not good for our area. It causes neighbors to clash. It costs the person, oh, I don't have any heirs, I'll take the money and run, not realizing the ripple effect it's having on all their neighbors and their fields and their drainage and their wildlife. And it will never, ever, ever gain 1 red cent. And I've been told by Darren Bailey's office and Brad Halbrook's office, we've got over a 90% chance as soon as this expires, they may tell you you're going to get tax revenue. I don't want to see you people under criticism because all of a sudden, gone.
Nancy, your time's up. Please.
I'm sorry, Jeff.
No.
But thank you. I'm just really, I'm not upset with anybody, but I've been through this process for over a decade, and I don't think there's any way that you folks have the information you need. Like, yours is spot on. I don't think it's possible for you to. And then you're going to be looked at badly because you've made a decision in your best.
You do understand we're going to go with the 3250, right?
Sir, I don't care about the 3250.
Okay.
I don't want them here, period.
Well, that's
And are we stuck with them?
no. Kirk? I mean, 3250 is what you folks are recommending, right?
I'm recommending gold standard in Iroquois County, which is 12 times over.
Yes.
Well, oh, I see.
That,
Well, I mean, your petitions all say 3250. Okay, anybody else?
I
Yes,
just want
sir.
to say one thing. First of all, I'm about as jealous as I can be that you people have this board. I'm from Douglas County, new, and your integrity in listening to your constituents blows me away. And your courage and not to be cowed by people threatening to sue you every day. It's amazing. You guys are great. And I'm not saying I mean it. Everything's been covered. The only thing I can imagine is that when it comes to decommissioning, Douglas County went to $100,000, changed it to about $200,000. At that very time, the decommissioning is going to be $450,000, which means that every landowner in Douglas County will probably forget what they're doing. Every landowner will pass on to their children or grandchildren $250,000 of debt plus inflation. So on your decommissioning, probably won't happen what you've done, and that's great. But on decommissioning, make sure it has the inflation factor and going to cover the whole thing. And when the wind company comes and says, well, you know, there's going to be salvage value, we'll take that off. No. You pay the full thing, and if they're so stinking valuable, you salvage them, and you can make lots of money. But I tell you what, you guys, thank you for restoring confidence of me and local government. Thank you.
Hi, Rita.
Hi, my name's Rita Rogers. I'm from Metcalf. We live in the area that is currently proposed. Yes, that's my letter. That is my signed letter that I sent to everyone and that I called everyone about to make sure you got. So the reason I haven't been at meetings, didn't know this was happening. Honestly, we didn't know. And the other reason is I work every Wednesday at 9 a.m. and I switched my work schedule to be at this Wednesday's meeting. But I think the thing that you need to understand is that we don't just want a setback, we don't want them. I signed that, but I signed it regretfully, like wanting actually a referendum against them altogether. And I realized when I talked to you on the phone that you said you're worried about people suing or the state, but there's a point where we just need to have a backbone and stand up against these things. If we don't want them, we don't want them. Why not just have a referendum against and not just have an ordinance? If we don't want them, we don't want them. So we live on an area proposed. We've been called by Orsted ourselves. We have said no to putting them on our farm ground because we are against them. And while that money might be good and it might help us achieve some of our dreams, those dreams mean nothing if we have to sacrifice our principles to achieve those things. So, 2 top reasons I do not want these. Health. It is a serious health concern of mine. I work very hard to keep myself healthy and to prevent any disease. I work in a cardiovascular ICU,
and I work very hard on them, and I have serious health concerns. 2, I don't want to look at them, and it's not just because of what they look like, it's because of what they represent. They represent greed, manipulation, lies. They aren't what they say they are. They are not green energy. They're green like money. So that's why personally, I don't want to look at them because of what they represent. They're not really that bad to look at when they're moving. But you know what? They represent greed. So let's talk about greed. So on the phone, Jack, you said to me that the health and safety were the only 2 jobs of the Edgar County Board, that it's written in the bylaws. But I find it interesting that in the paper, the main tone of it was money. And you said it's not just about money, it's about jobs. But let's be clear, those jobs aren't going to go to the job list of Edgar County. They probably won't even go to people in Edgar County to begin with. So that's the first point. But also, which is it? Is it health and safety or is it jobs? And can anybody give me a reason on this board that these windmills would be good for Edgar County besides money? One reason.
We're not answering questions. We're just receiving your.
Okay, so I'll take that as enough. When it comes to health and safety, there's the noise concern, there's the infra noise, there's the low noise that comes from them, there's the vibrations. When I drive to my friend's house where there's a wind farm, my cell phone doesn't work because of that wind farm. Her cell phone does not work at her home. If your cell phone does not work, there's obviously some kind of magnetic field that is interfering with something, and that cannot be healthy for you. Most of these articles I read that are put out by the wind turbine companies, that are the studies that are paid for by the companies, basically say, yes, they are bad for sleep, yes, they cause anxiety, they can cause stress, but those don't cause long-term health issues. Sleep, stress, anxiety cause long-term health issues. There are studies that show sleep increases your risk of cancer, increases your risk of obesity, increases your risk of hypertension, all of those things. The very basics, that the way God designed our body, ignoring those things are why we're in the health crisis we're in America. And these things do impact your health. These people don't come around and pay the people that live next to them because they're desirable. If this does not affect property value, if it does not affect your health, there would be no reason for these companies to pay people that do not own the ground, that just live next to them. Why else would they be paying them? They're paying them because they are not healthy, they are not good to live by.
You got it.
It's bright money. That's basically what I always have to say. Not healthy, not good for you to live by, bribe money, and I don't want it. I want a referendum against them. I don't just want a setback. I want a referendum against.
Thank you, Rita.
Mr. Chairman, Rita did send us the email to me. I received that this morning.
Okay.
I made copies, but
We
it's been
all-
crazy out here this morning.
That's all right.
So-
I called, most of them I did talk to and told them that I sent, so they would check their email, but
Okay.
yeah.
I got him.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Bill Stiff.
Hey, Bill.
I feel like the 3250 may be allowing a backdoor entrance to these people. What happens if you own a quarter section or whatever? You've got 3250 to an existing structure. Say your kid wants to build a house, a farm, a band site, whatever, that's up next to your line, and your house is 3250 in, there's a wind farm or a windmill right on your line. How do you justify that? You see what I'm saying? You could possibly have somebody wanting to build a house that is 3250 away from your house, your son, your daughter, but since it's right next to the line, you could possibly have a windmill right on the other side of your line.
That's something that.
So I think it should be property lines, not structures.
We'll have the committee look at that as they proceed.
Those are the only logical things to do.
Thanks, Bill. Did you have anything else, sir? Okay. Yes.
How many of you have been contacted by the wind farm company? Yeah, I just wondered if you've been contacted. Thank you.
Thanks. Somebody else?
Can I add 2 things and speak to that?
Sure.
When I was contacted, and I'm glad you brought this up, Before they would share a copy of the lease, I had to sign a non-disclosure agreement. I refused to sign it, therefore they would never give it to me. So I couldn't see the contents of the agreement. My personal history and background, when someone wants me to be quiet about something, that's never good. So that was why we never pursued anything, because I've looked at both sides of it years ago. I thought it might have a good option, but the more I dug into it, I don't like it. She mentioned the legislation, and I think everybody in here needs to know this because it's really important. We passed our zoning in our township to protect our township, and the state lobbyists came in and stripped our zoning rights right out of law and said, nope, only the county can. And we said when that happened, and I testified in Springfield on this, it's coming to the counties and they're going to strip the counties. This is only a stopgap. You have got to get a hold of not just your representative, you got to get a hold of the representatives that support this crap and voice your opinion and start making noise just like you did here today. That's the only way to stop this, because this isn't going to stop. Municipalities have 1.5 mile allowance by law. They can say nothing within 1.5 miles. Every municipality and village in this county ought to be passing that. Every single one of them ought to. Because eventually the state, I believe, sooner or later, these lobbies are going to come in and say, you have no more control. And they're going to continue to absolutely whitewash this crap. But you've got to get on the phone and you've got to call not just your reps, because your reps don't support this. They don't support the wind garbage going on. It's the other folks that don't, that all these city reps, all these communities that don't have a wind farm, that they're paying them off. Here's your campaign money, they're lobbying against you. Those are the people you got to talk to.
About 70 counties out of the 102 passed resolutions for whatever that's worth, including your board here, to tell the state to keep their hands off, to let local folks have local control of wind farms, whatever it is.
And local control is the argument, because for the longest time, these, and I'll call them what they are, greeny weenies, they've always talked local control, and now they want to take away local control. So when you talk to them, you want to keep your local control with the county board. You don't want them to lose their control.
Thanks, Kurt. Other comments, please? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Janet McCumber. I'm also a resident of Douglas County, and I'm also stunned by the open-mindedness of this board. If we had had this, Harvest Ridge Wing Complex would not exist. Much of what I had written to say to you all today is not applicable based on your comments, but I do want to add a couple of things adding to what you've said and what you said. Senate Bill 1602, which is the bill that was going to take away county rights, and you all signed an ordinance opposing that, has been taken off the table. However, the governor's comprehensive energy plan, while it does not include that language anymore, is now including language about giving these wind companies and so-called wind farms, which is not what they are, public domain, or eminent domain.
Right.
They're going to make them public utilities. And that's where we really need to be contacting our, not just our representatives, as you said, but all of them. If you're on Facebook, you can go to a page called Preserving Illinois County Rights. There's information. You can find out how you need to contact these people. And the other thing that I would say, that I would encourage you all to do, if you really want to keep the turbines away from here, as you are looking at wind companies' applications, you need to have it guaranteed in writing that they will promise that none of the ill effects that we're experiencing in Douglas County or in any other places in the world where the stories are all the same, that that's guaranteed in writing that it will not happen here. And that's the way to keep them out, because they can't do it. Thank you.
Thank you. So, gentlemen. Yes, sir.
Pat Sandstrom, Newman, Illinois. I live in the footprint. If you want to know anything, I'll give you my number. You can come to my house. I'll show you the third world country we live in. If you think getting windmills is going to help your county, you're mistaken. They came in, they were quiet once everybody found out. Then they were like, we're going to help the community. We're going to bring in jobs. We're going to eat at your restaurants, stay at your brand new hotels. They didn't do anything. When they got the job and got here, they told all the union guys to eat outside of Newman. Do not come to Newman at all. For gas, for food. We had business owners that went out there and said, why aren't you guys coming to Newman? And they said, we were told not to. Do not come here. The rock, the Newman, or the Tuscola Quarry, didn't get all the rock. They had a quarter of the rock. All the rock came from another trucking company that did all the trucking. So if you think your local trucking companies are going to get the jobs, you're mistaken. There was 2 people in the county that had a job that worked on the wind farm. 2 people. That was all the job growth you're going to see. We didn't see it. Still to this day, nobody's hired out of the community that works on the wind farm. The roads are terrible, culverts are bad. It does kill birds. There's windmills leaking oil. You can go out, there's 3 towers now that have oil socks around them that are leaking oil. I mean, it's just not good. The pushback, I live 2330 from the foundation of my house. We have an 80-acre field. And across that, to go back to his, I mean, that's too close. Even your 3250s, not far enough. If you're going from property lines and your neighbor thinks the money's going to help his life out, great. But for all the other landowners that are like, you know, there's a 99% that you can think, you know, you either want them or you don't. And how's this going to affect my neighbor? If you don't care about your neighbor, put them up. But if you even care about your neighbor 1%, do not do it. Do not give these windmill companies anything, because they're going to take it all. And your older people that own land, they're going to call. And if they're a little bit interested, they're going to keep calling. And the moment they say no, stop calling. They're going to keep getting rude calls. And it's horrible. They had to call the police to tell them to quit calling. I mean, it's horrible. Just a bad idea. But if you guys, I'm here, my phone number, I'll give it to you. You can come to my house and see what it's all about.
Any flicker?
Yeah, we have flicker in the morning, and at night our sunsets are horrible. You know, it used to be a beautiful sunset. We built a house out in the middle of the cornfield because we didn't want to be around anybody. And so we have flicker, and then the wind noise is another big thing. At night, or when they're catching wind, they'll pitch the blades, and that's when it sounds like a jet engine. If it's just one, it's vroom, 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 while you're sitting out trying to enjoy a campfire with your kids, or if they're all running, it's just a solid jet motor. Just whoo, and that's what you got to deal with. It isn't a mechanical grinding noise, but it's a noise. And the flashing red lights, yeah, that's a huge issue. We have blackout blinds on our kids' rooms. We have shut doors to block windows from our bathroom, but the red lights are horrible. And they'll tell you, well, we'll just shut the lights off. Well, they can't. They can do a perimeter, but the perimeter still has to flash. And any red light, I mean, you guys go out here north of town. I mean, you can see them. We're 35 miles away. I mean, it's horrible. Do not do it. Stay away.
Yeah, you can see it from Branson.
Thank you. I mean, you can see it from Kansas.
Thank you, sir.
So,
Yes, sir.
An idea came up, one day mentioned, if I could just address it. 2 things, one of them, I'm sorry. One thing, when I talked about the health effects, I live in town. I was married for way too long. And I will tell you now that the sleep deprivation is real. And I will tell you the effects on the heart can be very real too. That's my 3rd pacemaker, and I've had a lot of experience with it. But in regards to any municipality, any incorporated village or city in the county, I did get this done. I thought I had a good chance, but they get it done. I was told by a lawyer that 300 feet is a defendable annexation. I thought I had a 300-foot annexation going about a mile north of Newman, which would have pushed our mile and a half way out around. If anybody thinks about that, that's something that an incorporated village should do. So if somebody really didn't want it, I think Humans Incorporated, some are not, but if you're incorporated, you think, okay, you have somebody and the 300-foot corridor, you take how much acreage it is, that's the amount of tax you'd have paid. You don't pay tax, but that amount of tax would just be what the city taxes. For Newman, it's going to be about $6 an acre. That would be the city's tax, and we probably would have said, yeah, go ahead and do it. But if you want to expand your city limits 300 feet, and you can justify by saying, this is where people can put in 5-acre farms. Just an idea. They can't do that.
You're talking about a 300-foot wide strip.
Yes, 300 foot. I had it going. They backed off because of they're afraid their neighbors might be upset. But I had 300 feet going north from Newman. And my thing was on the Broadway slab said, here you can sell 5-acre patches around people, have a mini farm, that type of thing. But if I'd been able to go up as far as I wanted to, which was almost a Fairfield, that was a mile and a half just from your city limit, not the city center. So you put that mile and a half around out there. So if anybody wants to use that idea, you need to check the word plan, said, actually, you have 300 foot, you're good. They cannot refute that. And I say the city tax, you're going to pay all your tax, but the city tax on an acre of land in Newman is going to be about $6. So just an idea if you want to try it.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
My name's Chad Ellis. I'm northern part of the county, landowner, farm, but I've got a little bit different side too. I run a small wireless internet business that covers the northern part of the county primarily. Talking to some of people that do similar things in areas where these have gone in, it's a real struggle for these rural counties to have fast and accessible internet to begin with. Some of the areas where this has gone in, it's caused a lot of problems because the blades moving in and out of the path of the radio transmission that we have to use to be able to deliver internet to these rural customers is affected by these as well. That's in addition to just the distance out. Sometimes, yeah, keep them away from the houses, but there's a lot of distance we cover between towers to be able to get to your house. And with the density that they're putting these in, it's a large proportion or a large portion of the county that it affects and potentially blocks or takes existing customers that we've worked hard to get internet service to over the last several years. That's another challenge that you bring. So like Teresa said, it doesn't really matter how far away it is. It can still have other unintended consequences, similar to what you're talking about with cell phone reception. Our signals are very sensitive to being able to have clear line of sight from one of our towers. So, it's not only, a lot of people don't think about, if they don't have farmland, but they live in the country, it's not really going to affect me. Well, it may, because you may all of a sudden not have internet, quality internet that you've had for the last 10 years. So.
Thanks, Chad.
Randy, I'm in the middle of the meeting.
Good morning, folks. My name is Ted Harkey, and my wife and I lived in Vermillion County, and we were supportive of the wind farm when it come to our little town. And then, we got through the construction of it, and it was pretty messy, but we lived through that okay. And then they turned the turbines on. And then 11 months after that, it left our home. And we moved Christmas weekend. It was terrible. Okay? So, I get thrown into a lot of these meetings to tell people what happened. And having almost 8 years gone by since we left our house, I've had a lot of time to think about how to concise my speech in the 5 minutes. And here's what it comes down to. People need to be able to live and sleep inside their homes, okay? On this sheet is a community response prediction noise chart, okay? This was kind of like a list of compiled noise studies all done during the 1970s, and they measured how much noise was causing what kind of reaction from the community, okay? Some noise is more impactful, like repetitive, faucet dripping type of noise, and it just goes on, and that type of noise can wear you down. Some noise is a certain frequency, like the nails on a chalkboard or heavy subwoofer bass type noise. Well, that's what the kind of noise wind turbines make, is car doors opening and shutting and that thumping noise. And it comes and it goes and it wakes you up. And once it happens, your fight or flight reaction causes you to get excited, and you just can't relax enough to fall back asleep. So that's why you have a lot of repetitive awakenings at night from thumping air pressure pulses of these blades. So on this noise chart, we have widespread complaints. They start at 33.5 dBA. Well, in the rural community, our nighttime noise is about 25 dBA, and that's very quiet, and that's what you've enjoyed now. When a wind turbine comes in, and the wind company hires an acoustician, like they did in my case, the measurement was 46 dBA. And our situation was we were having wind turbines shut off out to about 3,400 feet away from our house so we could sleep. So the 3250, probably not enough. Our turbines are 500 foot tall. They probably expect to bring in 700 footers or 650 footer type turbines here. Make sure your setback is always a multiplier of a rotor diameter. The reason why I'm not just going with height is because I think the blade length is why the longer the blades are, the more flex that they have. And when they enter upper wind and come out of the wind and they start to point down lower to the ground, that air pressure is not as heavy on that blade. So every time the blade flexes forward and flexes going back to normal, it lets out air pressure pulse, and that's the thumping noise that I believe has caused a lot of the problems with sleep awakenings. This community response prediction chart also should apply to anything that's built that has a constant noise. Like if you've gone on and looked and listened to solar panel inverter noise, an inverter on a solar panel needs to be at least 800 feet away so you can enjoy your backyard on a sunny, nice day. They're very high-pitched, very disturbing type of noise. So make sure that when you do your solar ordinance, you have some property line noise limits that follow this kind of a chart. Okay? On the flip side, someone said they wanted the wind company to sign a contract that says none of these bad effects are going to happen to all the non-participants. That's great, and this is what I want them to do, and they've never done this, and they always pretend I never asked the question. Will the wind company sign a contract which states that the children will not be awakened in their beds, in their bedrooms at night? I took a lot of heat for this when I expanded it in Ford County at a zoning hearing. I said, I'm going to use you as an example. If you're at a party, enjoying the party with your wife, and a stranger comes up to your wife, he starts to mess with her and he taps her on the shoulder and he starts messing with her. He's not hurting the wife, but he's bothering her a little bit. You know who that bothers even more? Her husband or her boyfriend. You do not lay a hand on my wife or my girlfriend without making sure it's okay with me. Okay? Let's talk about the children in their beds in their bedrooms at night.
Time's up.
I'm almost done. Can I continue?
Absolutely.
If you're a father or a mother, and your kids are in your bed in your house that you paid for, that you paid the insurance, the mortgage, the taxes that you built, that you and your wife put together, and a wind turbine on the neighbor's property is making noise and waking up your kid in their bed at night, that's not much different. And the wind company says, that's not hurting that child. We're not hurting them. That's like a person coming into that bedroom at night and putting their hands under the bed sheets of that child's bed and touching that child and waking that child up. That is trespass. Okay? Make sure you have no trespass, and that's why we want this in there about no children are being awakened at night in their beds. Thank you very much. I have so much more I could tell you. I am an open book. You can ask me any question under the moon, and I'll answer it for you. Thank you very much, and very well, good job responding to your community. That was very good.
Yes, sir.
Joe Spencer, formed up by Kristen area. Just two quick things. First off, one of our family, long-term, lifelong family friends, he was on the Vermilion County Board, where you're all sitting now. He's since retired. But he was on the board when they approved the wind farm north of 74. He said numerous times that is the worst mistake he's ever made on the board. He said as soon as they signed the approval, his phone rang day and night, even in the middle of the night, complaints. A lot of them were aggressive, but nonetheless, a lot of upset people will probably voice their opinion long after this has been approved. But moving on past that, my brother and I also farm in Douglas County around these windmills. Two of our fields have ponds in now. We actually planted beans around ducks this year. Oh yeah, I know. Our landowners signed leases with the wind farms that whenever there's a problem with tile, they will fix it. Well, being over a year since they moved on to another project, they're getting calls now saying, well, we're not in the area, or we didn't cause that, even though these ponds were never there before the windmills. So as they approach them again, saying, we need to get this resolved, we have a contract with you, you're gonna fix it, the snarky remarks they get are, we have more money, take us to court. It's just another big company pushing big money and big agenda. Once they get your assigned approval, they own that land, whether you sold it or not. You're giving away your rights. I'd just like to keep that in mind.
Thank you for your comments. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Nancy Allen, and Jim and I live on the very far west side of Newman. Out our bedroom window, we just have an array of turbines. The closest one is about 2 miles away. We both experience health. I'm having a terrible time with sleep deprivation. Didn't realize it would do that to us, but starting in September when they went online in August, I kept a log of that sleeping inability, I guess you might say. But what I really wanted to address is when Douglas County did their ordinance back in 2009 or so, they put a setback of 1,000 feet from a primary residence. EDPR graciously moved it up to 1,500 feet. At that time, they were going to be 300 feet tall. When they came in, they're 600 feet tall. And now we're even hearing rumblings of 800 feet tall. So unless you even know what it is, the rotor diameter measurement is the best way to go on that, because you have an 800-foot turbine, and they are not windmills. They are industrial turbines moving over your property. There's no way you're going to be able to live with that health-wise, sanity-wise, any-wise. But you need to know what they're going to do, because we didn't know that they were even sneaking around like everybody else says, and then all of a sudden it's a whole different size that isn't even compatible with a 1,000-foot ordinance setback. So be careful what you wish for, be careful what you look at. You got to read it all, do not trust.
Thank you. Okay, well, we want to thank you all for being here sincerely, and all of your comments that you've given us over the last several weeks. I know I've talked to folks as far back as a year, but thank you for being here. We're going to form a committee to look at both solar and continue to look at wind. We can do that on Wednesday. We are not going to lessen, we'll just leave the 3250 intact for now. The committee will look at many of the issues. I know that Lisa's been taking a lot of notes about that, and we'll address those forthwith. So, thank you all. Yes, Kurt?
If I could ask one question, and I think I know the answer, but I would encourage those from other counties to ask this question to your county board. Do any county board members currently have a wind lease agreement or been approached for a wind lease agreement?
No. Does anybody?
No chance now.
We've been approached.
But nobody on the board has one, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, they've been approached.
If you have one, which happened in Douglas County, you file a criminal complaint, because that's a conflict of interest, it's a violation of the Officers Prohibited Activities Act, and it could be a felony, a class 3 felony, and you had board members that voted the way they did with a financial interest in those wind farms.
I'm sorry, I didn't know if I
No, that's not.
Well, in fact, that same board member, the day before they voted on a permit, which he abstained from because that covered him, the day before then, I was called, I went up and sat by the park, and he was in the EDP office for over an hour. When he came out, he and Miss Kurtz shook hands and smiled at each other, and he left. He was there an hour before the date.
An abstention, he does not have the power to abstain, we'll get into that, I can give you all the information.
I would like that, in fact. Thank you.
Okay.
Court's rule on that issue.
Well, we're gonna move on to some other issues. You're more than welcome to.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you.
You're welcome all. You're more than welcome to stay if you want, but otherwise, we're gonna go over the agenda. Augie, before I forget, these are all the petitions we received. Good to see you.
Yeah, I just want to write down my number if you guys want to call.
Yeah, I'll take it. I want to let the camera know that the board's going to move back into the conference room here at the Highway Department.
Start as soon as Augie gives us the high sign. Okay, Merlin. Merlin has something he wants to talk about the war memorials.
Well, I'm kind of been in charge for a long time of the war memorial, and the old World War I, II, if any of you ever look at it, is getting in really bad. A lot of the names you cannot read, and it's my goal to get that thing refurbished, and it's not going to be a cheap deal. And if any of you have been out there and noticed that the northeast corner concrete is in bad shape, I worry about somebody twisting an ankle on that or something. So I've got one bid so far from Dan Creech, and I'm telling, I knew it's not going to be a cheap fix to get that done even. And that bid so far is $36.50, but he's going to have to do about a 10-foot deal each way and block up the pillars, take them out, and then redo it. But I think it's a fix that needs to be done. We don't need no insurance deal on that. And the other thing is...
You're talking about the memorial on the east side of the courthouse?
Yeah,
okay.
The old one there. Yeah. If you ever notice it,
yeah, I come in that way every meeting, and I see there's a problem
and
there.
So, then the other thing is the names, and it's old. I go up there and clean it up once in a while, but it's really bad shape. The old gold leaf, I've worked for, since I got off the board, I've worked trying to find somebody that can make these name tags that's the same as in there. I didn't want to change it.
Yeah.
You know, it's 70 years old or so, and finally I found a guy over by St. Mary's that's got a big laser machine, and here's one of the blocks I took out of there and he fixed. Pass that around. He lasers that in the wood and then fills it with that gold. And it can, and it's like that leaf, a lot of it has come off. That can be redone if something happened. And he says probably never would come out. He told me he'd do them. There's almost 4,000 names on it. $3 a whack. I said, gee. So he came over and took pictures and told me he's going to see if he can't tweak that back for us. And so I'm doing everything I can to get stuff as cheap as I can. And it's going to take a big fundraiser, I know. I think we may have $3,000 some dollars in our till, and I just had a lady out there tell me that she might be able to help me with $5,000 or $10,000. And I said, oh my God.
She got her name and number right there, brother. Yeah. You did, didn't you?
Got her birthday and everything.
And so I said, oh my gosh, but anything will help. But I've had a lot of people tell me, oh, we got to start a fundraiser. Well, that's what I want to bring to you, let you know that I would like to do a fundraiser to get that all refurbished and back up in good shape and make it look really nice.
There is a possibility of having a GoFundMe like to put on the.
We can do anything for as I'm concerned.
GoFundMe on the internet or something.
And I'm not good with that, but I got plenty of people that are.
Right.
And that get that, and then I'm sure the Prairie Press will help us out. And we'll get, when I get started on this, I wanna see where we stand first before I jump into it looking for money, because that name deal is gonna be like $12,000 right off the bat now. Ooh-wee. And then $4,000 for the concrete, then the window frames and the woodwork around it needs to be. And that's gonna be a big job. The time you get that all back in shape, I'm even gonna go out to Simon and see if they might be able to do some frames that don't have to be painted or varnished or anything, that would look decent there, collared. I'll do anything I ever can to cut the cost, but I just wanted to fill the board in where I wanted to start and see if I had your okay.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm going with that. I said I'd like to get that done before I die. And I've already died once, so we don't want to do that again. And it's been almost 3 years.
Oh, okay.
So, all right, so that's where I am. As soon as I get all my bids and everything, I'll fill that together and I'll let you guys know what we're looking at, and we'll start trying to get a fundraiser going. And I know the Pyramid said let them know, and I'm sure the banks and people in the county. I mean, $50, $10, any place we can get it. So I figured $25,000 to $30,000 to refurbish that thing. You know, when you get right down to it, because I can't do. I mean, I do a lot of little stuff, but I can't do that big work anymore. So as much as I can, I will. But that's just the way it is. So, all right. Thank you very much for that. We'll be getting back
And you're
with you.
welcome to come to a meeting too, I mean, the regular meeting, and so you might be able to spread the word more about, especially when it gets to the.
Well, when I get down, when I get down to where we want to go.
Right.
I sure will.
We'll
I'll keep
formalize
everybody
it.
informed.
Yeah.
Because that's what it's going to take, and I know the county has been real good about anybody I've talked to.
You
So
wanna run for the board again, Vernon?
no thank you. My wife wouldn't have it, and plus my health ain't worth the hoot either, guys. I had a big spell a couple months ago, took 16 pounds of fluid off of me. I said, oh, didn't need that again.
Well, it's good to see you.
So same here, guys. Have a good one. Take care.
All right, Brian.
Get in touch with me, we'll do a story.
That's what I figured. So whenever we get started, we'll work together. Thank y'all.
Yeah.
What? Yeah, by accident. We can go over some of this. Any of you looked over the agenda? I wanted to note a couple things on the ambulance bids. The city of Chrisman, I'm sorry, not the city of Chrisman, the ambulance service in Chrisman accept Jeremy Neal's bid to buy the equipment, building, and vehicles, okay, for $49,000. His attorney and the ambulance attorney have gotten together, cleared everything. We're waiting to hear from the state's attorney to make sure everything's clear for us, so we accept that bid. That's why it's on the agenda. Jeremy gave us a bid, and we just need to follow through with the state's attorney. We may have to have a special meeting down the pipe to approve that. Just give it, and we may know by Wednesday from it, I don't know. The other thing is the liquor issue, and I wanted to, go ahead.
On that, to accept the bid, but then they still have to work the contract out.
Absolutely, yes, that
And
contract is still, we'll have to have a
Have us
special.
look at it to see if that's,
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
yep.
okay.
What did I say? Oh, liquor. I wanted to remind you, according to state law, if you hold a liquor license, and I'm saying this not to offend you, Andy, but just to give.
It's hard to offend me.
I'm gonna leave that alone. But we're back to the wise man that says nothing. At any rate, Andy can't even participate in conversations about it when we come up with it, because he owns a liquor license. I've suggested to him that he has had complaints about the liquor license to refer to me or to one of you guys or gals to go ahead and explain to them, you really can't predict, they need to talk to us, okay? or they need to come to a meeting, okay? We still don't have any word. I checked with Augie, yesterday or today?
This morning.
About hearing anything from the state's attorney, and we've heard nothing. There is some confusion down in that area that we need to get straightened out, and we'll see how things wind up. It probably won't even be an issue this Wednesday, but I wanted to discuss it with you. Okay? Are there any other questions about the agenda at this point that you'd like to have information on, so you can consider it between now and Wednesday?
Number 15 on the transfer of funds.
Yeah, you should have it in your packet.
Okay.
There are certain items that weren't able to be transferred when we were given the state funds, or state and federal funds earlier. I think we were given 274,000. So that's ring a bell. Anyway, we used it all up, and we still had $80,000 worth of bills if we had more money, and that will come out of that rescue fund of 1.666. Likewise, the airport, it should actually say replace and upgrade of the main door hangers would also be able to come out of that, okay? But it is an upgrade as well as a replacement.
Haven't anything to go for what, 8 or 10 years? Remember we had the same problem?
Well, we had some
Long time
issues, and we had somebody come in and kind of use duct tape and pour beer on it or whatever, and it's held up, but it does need to. These will also be insulated, which will have more of an effect on our energy issues.
About 19 on the agenda. Don't quite understand that.
Okay, there are 4 or 5 lots, and I forget the exact number. They're on the corner where the Chinese restaurant used to be, and the city has deeded them to us for use in the possible use as the jail.
Is that the ones that have people in them?
No, there's
nothing there now.
Where Cook and Link
The old
used to be.
Chinese restaurant, don't you remember where that was?
Yeah.
Okay, it's a lot now.
Okay, and they simply ask for a resolution or a motion that recognizes that they did that for us, and that if we don't put the jail there, they simply, if they request the return of it, we'd be willing to do it. And then they could put like a small park that you could sit and have lunch or smoke a cigarette or whatever. Okay? Hopefully unincorporated. I did make it, I think, and this is my fault, I think the number 12 should be wind and solar. Okay?
Yeah, that was the first I heard.
That was,
of it
no, that was my fault, I'm sorry. But that is a Scribner error. We'll get a new copy of the resolution on wind farms out to you, or have it available for you on Wednesday, okay?
But basically, we're just gonna leave it.
There's one change
Okay.
in the, plus we need to pass that, because on passing, that takes off the moratorium. So we have to do something. There was a small thing we had on Flickr.
We never did, yeah, we got that resolved. There was another one that we didn't resolve. I have to go back and see what
Well,
it was.
that if there's something we don't have resolved, sounds like you've got a lot of issues to look at. The committee does.
I think one of them was the type of light on top of the thing where it comes on when the airplane comes by.
Yeah, that's in there.
We have it in there.
I read that,
Yeah. What I'd be interested in though is the perimeters.
Right.
Yeah, that was my only question. My impression from talking to them was that it would kill all the lights. So that's something we need to look at. Yes, Lisa.
So we pass it, and if our committee decides we need to go in and do more strengthening, then does it become a moratorium again, or we would just vote
Doesn't
on
have
it
to.
again?
No, it doesn't have to.
Just
Unless
an
you find,
amended one?
unless you find something that's just critical. I mean, kind of like if you find out and you go, oh my gosh, we forgot this and this is really important, we can always put another moratorium on, but we have to have a good reason to do it, according to the state's attorney, okay?
Is it covered, is the diameter covered?
No, it's tip height and footage to setback, which could be amended, I mean, if that's what you decide to do, okay? But I mean, I think we need to go with something that, and then have it evolve from there. Do you disagree, Lisa?
No, I don't.
Okay, I just, yes, sir.
I was gonna ask, does each turbine have a road that goes to it, taking
Yes.
farmland?
Yes.
I just thought about that the other day.
Yeah.
It'd also take out farmland, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I just wondered,
But that's,
some of the roads that we
legal
belong,
right,
right?
just tell them not to come.
Or-
Gotta have transmission. Do we?
No.
We,
yeah, and in passing a referendum, by the way, there's nothing in the law that said that that would be binding.
so what we gotta do is make it financially not good for them, so they won't come here.
And we've been
Too many
told,
eyes to
My
dot and T's to cross.
understanding, we sat in on a couple, I mean, we were a couple meetings, and I asked the guy, I said, what's the magic number? And he said,
What's that, babe?
2,000.
2,000, yeah.
they're
And
not
I
gonna-
thought we were gonna really kind of limit it at that, and then,
I believe
they
that's
will,
history.
yeah, I don't think they'll,
No.
well, we'll
really-
just find out where we sit, you know?
I still tell you 3250 will not stop them in my neighborhood because somebody lives there.
yeah, but you gotta have enough people to put a farm up. They're not gonna come in and put 5 of them up. They
You know,
want-
4 or
they want-
5 people through there, they're all fairly large holdings. You know, like Mike and Kirk Woodyard, and you folks say no, and where the hell are they gonna go?
Right, that was what was interesting and important, was not only the number, but I was really surprised flipping through those to see some of the names on there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's all good.
At
yeah.
some point, can you make copies of all that stuff we got?
I gave them all to him.
Like all the petitions
All
and
that.
any information other than
You all
those
in
binders, if we wanna look at them, we can come up there, but all that other stuff, could you make copies for everybody for the Wednesday board meeting?
Yes,
By then?
is this everything that was handed to you?
That's all, everything that was handed to me. And anybody else, I don't,
Yeah.
Got it. Yes.
yes, Dan?
This may not be too important, but one of the salesmen for one of the wind farm companies wants to meet with me tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I would, I'm gonna call, we're gonna call the wind farms here directly and let them know what's going. There's no sense for them to travel long distances.
His name's Adam.
Yeah.
if you know him.
Adam?
Is that the NL one?
Andy is.
Andy
that's right.
Byers.
Andy, yeah, but we're gonna call Andy and,
There's no such form of company.
no, no. He may call and make sure that you're not gonna be there,
Okay.
but yes.
Okay, I just
Good-
wondered if I
good
should
point.
meet with him or not, or just, if he does come.
Well, you maybe get a free breakfast out of him, but that.
Well,
But
probably.
we're gonna tell them something for free, geez.
I can have more than English muffin.
Maybe he'll bring you a cat.
I got more than English muffin this time.
Careful.
Gosh.
So,
Yes.
I've got one
Yeah,
thing that,
please.
for this wind farm committee to consider. I brought up earlier about the road use agreement. We need to, that needs to be changed, the language. Another thing, in doing all the research that I've been doing, I think in Logan County, good neighbor clause that they have in their wind farm ordinance or whatever it's called. That's something we need to take a look at, the language, and see if we want to add that to ours. I think that'd be a good idea. And another thing in Logan County is, you know, Kirk and some other people have brought up about the loss in property value. And with Logan County, they've got a property value, they established a property value insurance program that somehow is managed through the tax assessor's office. And this is an agreement they have with the wind farm company, so if someone has had a loss in property value, they can get compensated through an insurance program.
So that would be applicable to either solar or wind.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah,
nice to
absolutely.
know.
Right.
That's why we need to kind of do them both together.
Mhm.
And a lot of the stuff I assume would be, you know, what's good for one would be good for the other.
Right. But, you know, those, and I'm sure there'll be some other issues, you know, some stuff was brought up today that, you know, you need to take a look at and see if we need to add Because like say, you know, everybody's saying now that we got the 3250, that's gonna kill it. Well, it might not.
It might not.
And if it doesn't, we need to have, for now, you know, beef up our ordinance to help protect people.
Right.
And they're right about like on the solar, we have inverters in the tack room. Alex can't spend any time in that tack room. It just absolutely drives him nuts.
What was that?
Mary and I can't hear it, but he can.
What is?
It's the sound that the inverters make when they're operating. It's a high frequency deal, and Alex just he can't spend any time in that room. So, I mean, different people, you know, you go, oh, they're making that shit up, pardon me. But, you know, they're not. Different people can hear different frequencies, and sound bothers differently, and light. All that stuff affects people in different ways.
Yeah, I had kind of breakfast with the guy that's working on the one over here from Paris, Texas. So we talked about getting local people in, but it's kind of odd. Paris, Texas, that's where it was from.
Well, that's Paris. He's from
Yeah,
Paris.
yeah.
The other thing I think they care about is, if you've ever been on the floor of the House, which I have, and I've actually been a lobbyist in the House, is that what they need to do is not just do all the city reps and the city senators. What they need to do is really lobby and bombard the whips and the leadership, because that's gonna they're gonna tell everybody else how to vote. I mean, it's not that they shouldn't get some letters, but if you're gonna send 10,000 letters to somebody, send it to the Speaker of the House. Don't send it out to the rank and file, because that's not gonna do any good. Well, not as much good. The guys that are making the decision are probably 2 or 3 men and women that are making the decision.
Telling them how they're gonna vote.
That's right, and they do. I mean, they sit there and they point at them and says, if you want, you know, I've seen it.
Oh, yeah.
It's real. So, you know, whenever you get a chance, don't just write to some senator or rep. They need a concerted effort to write to leadership. That's gonna make all the difference in the world. That's just my 2 cents.
Well, I thought something was interesting that Kirk said that I didn't think it got very much coverage. But he said, when do these tax benefits expire?
Yeah.
They come up,
I had never heard that before.
yeah, they're every 4 or 5 years.
Really?
Oh, so they
They're
renew them.
renewable,
Okay.
okay? But they have to act on them. They have a sunset clause in them, and then they can just automatically vote
Say
and
we're not gonna
renew.
do anything.
Right.
But if they renew, it isn't necessarily guaranteed that the tax rate would be the same. It could be more, it could be less.
Well, they
if
have
never knew.
historically just done it, because then all the assessors would have to be notified. But that's, and who's to say you get it, they renew it now, and in 4 or 5 years, they don't
They say
renew it
forget
again.
Kinda like building a wall, all of a sudden you're done.
Yeah. So, at any rate, but those were good points. There was a lot of good points that were brought up.
Right. I like the guy from Douglas County.
Well, that's because he complimented you over and over and
Right,
over.
'cause I did a good job.
He's the only one that's
It's a
done
good
that
thing
for
there
long
wasn't
time.
good thing there wasn't a mirror handy for you,
At least
Dan.
my
You
phone, at least my phone didn't go off in the middle of the night.
4 or 5 times.
Is there anything else to bring up?
No.
Yeah, sorry.
That's
We're Derek and we
Oh,
need.
trust me, I was actually called
I'm
off the
sorry.
rec, oh no, I can't do it, never mind, I'll tell you later.
Can't
Go on.
So I'm sorry.
All right,
Derek,
anything else to come before the meeting? All those, or I need a motion to adjourn in a second? Andy seconds, Dan makes the motion. Are you happy? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Not doing